Good afternoon, everyone. We'll shortly be starting the webinar. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join and then we'll get underway. Right, let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's House Percival's Housing Snapshot, the first of 2024. And today we're looking at almshouses, their rich history, unique legal framework, and the challenges they face today. On the screen, you'll see a variety of the headshots of our social housing, property and housing management teams. Today, you just have myself, Katie Redding, and I'm an associate in the social housing team. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we begin. As usual, there's an opportunity for you to write in any questions that you may have in the Q&A function, which you'll be able to see on your screen. If you have any issues during the webinar, such as with sound or being able to see anything, please do reach out in the chat function and a member of the team will try and help as soon as possible. Now today we are looking at almshouses, what they are and the benefits they provide, and we're also going to take a look at how almshouses operate and what their biggest challenges are in modern day society. As usual, this is a topic that we could probably talk about for a very, very long time, but with only 30 minutes, we're going to try and cover as much as possible. However, if it's an area that interests you greatly and it's something you'd like us to look into more, then please do let us know through the chat function or through the feedback form that we sent around at the end of the webinar. Now, what are almshouses? Almshouses are one of the oldest forms of social housing in England, with a rich history going back almost 1,000 years. They are a unique form of social housing, and they are owned by a charity and can only be used by the charity exclusively providing affordable housing. There are 1,700 almshouses charities in the UK, with up to 36,000 people living in the almshouses, but not many people know about them. Almshouses play an important role in helping to address the housing issues we are currently facing in modern day society. Now, as you can see in the picture on the screen, almshouses are often built to comprise multiple dwellings, and they're often houses or they can be flats. As I've said before, they are owned by a charity and can only be used by the charity providing affordable housing. The almshouses properties are gifted to the charities by a variety of people, such as archbishops, merchants, and wealthy landowners. Although not everyone can live in an almshouse, those that apply to live in an almshouse must meet the charity's criteria, which is set out in the governing documents. The criteria will vary from each charity, but often requires applicants to live in the local area, and by living in the almshouse, it would offer them relief from financial hardship. There are a huge variety of almshouses across the UK, and whilst they are often seen as homes for older people, that's not actually the case. And almshouses can be for specific groups of people, such as fishermen or miners. Some have age restrictions and some can actually accommodate families. Almshouses are often designed to build community within them, offering independent living while providing friendship and support when needed. Before delving into the legal structure of almshouses, I wanted to take a moment to show a few examples. On the screen, you'll see two pictures. On the left is a picture of Corsham Almshouses. Now, Lady Margaret, who's pictured on the right, was the wife of Sir Edward Hungerford, who was a commander under Oliver Cromwell during the Civil War. Sir Edward died in 1648, leaving Lady Margaret a wealthy widow. And in 1665, she decided to purchase a plot of land to the south of her estate and built 6 almshouses specifically for the poor, along with ancillary buildings and a schoolroom to teach poor boys in the area. The almshouses were completed in 1668. Now, Lady Margaret left very specific instructions of how the almshouses were to be run and what was expected of the master who lived there with the residents. These instructions were set out in Lady Margaret's 45 ordinances. The ordinances included things such as not to gamble or swear, and you weren't allowed to drink either. Residents had to mend their own windows, look after their properties, and they had to attend their gardens and tend to the common hedge which they hung their washing outside on. Church attendance was also required, as well as daily prayer. Now, these almshouses are still used today, although be pleased to know the 45 ordinances are enforced. And you can visit the ancillary buildings and the school grounds if you wish to immerse yourself into the history of this site even further. Another site is Whiteley Village, near Walton-on-Thames. Now, the Whiteley Homes Trust was founded by William Whiteley, a successful retail entrepreneur who set up Whiteley's department store, which is now a large shopping complex. Unfortunately, William Whiteley was murdered by his illegitimate son in 1907, and when he died, his estate was instructed to give £1 million to build properties for those in need in the local area. At this point, the trust with the Whiteley Trust was made, and the trust began building the village in 1914. And it's said by some to be the first purpose-built retirement villages in England. The first resident was Eliza Palmer, a retired nurse who moved into her cottage in 1917. Whiteley Village now comprises around 250 almshouses and are offered to people who have reached state pension age, have limited financial means, and are able to live independently. Apparently, some of these cottages still have the original oak dresses constructed from the wood that was felled during construction of the site back in 1914. Another site slightly closer to home for those of us in Norfolk is Holcombe Almshouses. Now, these are run by the Countess of Leicester's Almshouse charity. The charity was officially registered in 1965, however, the governing documents date back to 1775. And the charity's objects were to provide almshouses for 3 poor men of 60 years and over and 3 poor women of 60 years or over in the local area. The charity was provide the almspersons with income for maintenance, as well as coal and clothing. These almshouses, as you can see on the picture to the left, are occupied next to the triumphant arch, which was designed by William Kent. And these almshouses are still occupied today. You can walk past them or drive past them as you enter into the entrance of Holcombe Estate. Now, a slightly more modern example is Thrale Almshouses. These are owned and run by the Thrale Almshouses and Relief in Charity. The charity was named after the Thrale family, and the original almshouses were founded in 1832 by the daughters of Henry Thrale, who was a wealthy local landowner. The original almshouse was originally constructed in the 1830s, but demolished in 1930s, and 10 more modern homes were constructed in their place. As you can see from the pictures on the the site underwent a major refurbishment in 2015, and they retained 8 of the 10 original almshouses, and they've upgraded it and extended them, adding 2 blocks of fit-for-purpose apartments. And all of the properties on the site face the communal garden in the centre. The site now is women only, and there are 18 alms women living here now. The site was nominated for a variety of architectural awards for its innovative design and focus on sustainability. Now, what many people may not know is that almshouses provide great benefits to their residents and wider community. A study was carried out in 2023 by Bayes Business School, which analysed up to 100 years worth of records and reported that residents tend to live up to 2.4 years longer in comparison to members of the older population who lived in lower socio-economic backgrounds. This 2.4 year boost was said that it could be due to a strong sense of community and social belonging within the almshouses, which in turn led to better physical and mental health. As we know, the enhanced wellbeing then led to reduced loneliness, which is a pertinent issue for the older population. Housing Lynn and the Almshouses Association also produced a report in 2021, which noted that almshouses generated great financial benefits for the social care and health economy, equating into £43.2 million a year, which is incredible. In addition, the report highlighted that almshouses free up almost 4,000 homes for the local authority. Residents have a lower likelihood of residential care admission and a lower likelihood of loneliness, and it also leads to a reduction in lower GP and A&E visits. One of the most significant advantages of living in an almshouse is the sense of community they foster, often situated in serene and supportive environments. They create close-knit communities of like-minded individuals who share similar life experiences. With loneliness and social isolation being two of the most common issues faced by older population, having almshouses that provide access to supportive community and reduce the adverse health risks are key to our society. Almshouses often have communal spaces for residents, as we saw from a few of the examples on the previous slides, and it helps residents to socialise and engage in activities on offer. For example, St John's Foundation has an activities programme set out for its residents that encourages them to focus on physical health and engage with other residents and the wider community. Now, how do almshouses operate? As I've already mentioned, they're run by a variety of different charities, and these charities comprise of trustees that are often volunteers. Each charity will have a different set of objectives that they need to comply with, and it will dictate how the charity is run and who can live in an almshouse. One of the interesting facts about almshouses is that the residents do not have a traditional tenancy agreement. Instead, they hold licenses to accommodate. Now, this topic has been discussed immensely over the years, and there have been two very prominent cases noted on the screen, which I will discuss. Now, the key case of Gray v. Taylor confirmed that trustees have power to permit and under a duty to permit an almsperson to occupy rooms in an almshouse, and there's no need to resort to a formal traditional tenancy agreement to set out the almsperson's rights. This is because a grant of tenancy may obstruct the performance of a trustee in their duty to provide accommodation for deserving persons. It would be, the court argued it would be wrong for them to grant a tenancy, as it cannot be easily revoked if the almsperson no longer satisfies the criteria, such as if they suddenly became wealthy or no longer in financial hardship. This means the provision of almshouses accommodation has created a tendency of trustee to beneficiary rather than the standard landlord and tenant we so often see. The Court of Appeal confirmed again in the case of Watts v. Stewart that residents of almshouses occupy as licensees only. The Court of Appeal held, amongst other things, that Mrs. Watts was not a tenant because she was not entitled to exclusive possession of the flat, and that she only held a personal licence on the terms of a letter of appointment. The court reiterated that whether or not a person's occupation as a tenancy or a licence is not determined by the label of the document, but the intention of the parties. In this case, the charity trustee could only properly fulfil the objectives of the charity by granting a personal licence that could be revoked if the almsperson no longer qualified, the same as decided in Gray v. Taylor. The court confirmed that denial of security of tenure, which is often provided in other cases, is clearly justifiable here in a proportionate measure which secures a fair balance between the interests of the charity and current and future almspersons. This means, therefore, that an alms person does not benefit from the rights afforded by those with standard tenancy agreements, but they do have some protection from eviction, and they are to be provided with a 4-week notice to quit. Another interesting fact about almshouses and licenses is that the normal rules of succession do not apply. This means that on the death of a alms person, the accommodation does not pass through their lines of succession. The license will simply come to an end, and the trustees can find a new qualifying person to occupy the dwelling. Now, almshouses are very unique, and some may argue they're a bit of an anomaly in our modern day society and our modern legal system, which is so focused on tenant rights. You may be surprised to learn there is no legal definition of almshouses, even though they are a form of social housing. Almshouses charities are virtually all regulated by the Charity Commission. However, 200 or so are also registered with the regulator of social housing, which means they must also comply with the regulator standards. This means that if a private registered provider runs an almshouse, the regulator standards say that they must offer tenants terms of accommodation which are compatible with the purpose of the accommodation, needs of individual households, sustainability of the community, and an efficient use of the housing stock. Now, whilst almshouses don't have a legal definition, they also don't meet the definition of affordable housing set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. This is because they do not provide affordable housing for rent, because they have licenses, they cannot offer starter homes, discounted market sales housing, or other affordable routes to home ownership. And this creates huge difficulties for charities and the local planning authority teams when charities look to expand through new developments. Now, because of their unique legal framework, this means that almshouses are also exempt from right to buy legislation. Because almspersons hold a licence and they've got no security of tenure, this means they're exempt, which means that then the almshouses, whilst they're owned by the charity, must stay and be used as almshouses in perpetuity. Quite recently, a Member of Parliament, Rachel Maskell of York Central, recently raised a question to the Department of Levelling Up and asked whether the Secretary of State was going to do anything to ensure that almshouses continue to be protected from the right to buy legislation. Unfortunately, on this occasion, no substantive response was provided, only confirmation that almshouses are currently exempt. It will be very interesting to see if this is a potential area of change for the future. Almshouses face a variety of challenges in modern day society. One of those is funding. There is some funding available through Homes England, and grants are available for major repairs, remodelling, and some new development, but this can be quite difficult to obtain. Most almshouses fundraise to bring money in for new developments or rely on donations. The Almshouses Association, which I'll come on to in a moment, do offer grants. However, more government funding and awareness is required to ensure that almshouses charities are not struggling and can continue to offer the best accommodation and support to their residents. An additional hurdle to this is that many almshouses charities are not able to access Section 106 funding due to a lack of understanding at local authority level and guidance documentation about the current provision of Section 106s. This suggests that only regulated housing providers can be regarded as beneficiaries of Section 106 affordable housing sites. This guidance is often taken as an eligibility criteria by local authorities, which then can mean that small housing providers such as almshouses charities struggle to receive Section 106 sites. An exception to this, however, is the Appleby Blue almshouse, which you can see pictured on screen. This was built as part of a Section 106 affordable housing contribution in a development of luxury flats near Tate Modern in London. Now, as we've seen in some of the earlier slides, almshouses are really quite beautiful buildings, many of them going back hundreds of years. However, as they have aged, they have required more and more maintenance. The cost of maintenance has increased greatly, and whilst many almshouses require a contribution from residents towards maintenance, it's not enough to maintain without additional support. A further challenge for almshouses is that because of their design and age, they're quite hard to retrofit, especially for the needs of residents as they get older and require further care. The fact that many are listed buildings make this even harder, and also makes it means that many will struggle to receive a net zero target, which a lot of housing providers are aiming for. A further issue is that charities may struggle with future planning. Trustees of almshouses are often volunteers, and as time goes on, trustees will change and charities may struggle to find replacements. This can then make future planning very difficult. This in turn means that many almshouses charities may not apply to be regulated by the regulator of social housing. This is because, say, most of these charities are quite small, and as it's volunteer based, then we would have the capacity for the requirements of the regulator. However, some charities may consider a move to become a CIO, which is a charitable incorporated organisation, to help with the challenges that the charities face. This can be a daunting task. However, the HCA has now provided guidance for charities to follow, and this should assist many. Whilst future planning is an issue, there are some cases where charities won't have the funds or willing trustees to continue, and the charity will then look to dispose of the property and close the charity entirely. If such a situation arises, charities may have to get consent from the Charity Commission to such a disposal, given the unique nature of almshouses and the legal structure of the charities themselves. But whilst there are some significant hurdles for charities to overcome, there are actually more almshouses being built today than ever before. And the Almshouses Association estimates that charities are building up to 700 new homes a year, and that they would like to support charities building a further 5,000 homes by 2030. The Almshouses Association, a snippet you can see on the screen, was set up in 1946 when a meeting held in Southwark Cathedral with the representatives of London's almshouses formed a committee to safeguard the interests of the homes and the well-being and welfare of residents. Now, the association assists charity trustees to manage their resources effectively, support them in providing good quality housing, and to promote the welfare and independence of residents while trying to preserve the historic tradition of almshouses for the future. The Almshouses Association now provides support, information and guidance to over 1,600 independent almshouses charities. And the association regularly meets with the Charity Commission, Homes England, and has even set up an all-parliamentary group for almshouses to raise further awareness. As regulations and housing standards change, there is a need for almshouses to meet these changes accordingly. Not that there are policies, procedures, which I say can be quite daunting if they're volunteer-based. The association has its own board of trustees who are responsible for guiding the charity and developing, overseeing and delivering their strategy. In addition to this, the association produces a quarterly Almshouses Gazette, which is sent to the members to keep them up to date and informed. The association quite clearly plays a vital role in helping the charities and have a great library of reports, articles and information on their website if you wish to explore it further. Now that brings us to the end of our webinar for today. Are there any potential questions? We have a question. Is there a possibility for the government to bring residents' rights in line with tenant rights? That's a very good question. I would love to have a crystal ball available to answer that and see what future government plans hold. I would think, however, given the time that has passed since Gray v Taylor and then the further case of Watts v Stewart, that it'd be unlikely for such a change to be made. But as with each year, there is more government pressure to provide affordable housing, so I'd never say never to such a change. We have another question. As Almshouse residents are licensees, can they be evicted at any time? Again, very good question. Almshouses residents have to be provided with a 4-week notice to quit to be evicted. I understand that if a notice is to be provided, that it has to be agreed between all of the trustees of the charity, rather than a single trustee deciding that a notice should be provided. And this will have 4 weeks for the resident to leave the premises. Another question. They're not part of the NPPF definition of social housing. Does development of new almshouses not count as social housing? As I said, whilst it doesn't form part of the definition, new almshouses do count as social housing, and they can be awarded funding through Section 106 schemes, as seen with Appleby Blue. So whilst they are a form of social housing, it's just without being part of the NPPF definition, it creates an extra hurdle for almshouses charities to overcome, making it difficult for them to obtain funding. But they are definitely a form of social housing. I believe that is all the questions we have received. If you have any further questions and would like to send them through afterwards, then please do. The feedback form will come round. Thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you have a lovely afternoon.